We're going to go through the morning. Like we said last night, we're going to talk a little bit about what happened in the past couple hours, and then we're going to preview what is going to happen this afternoon and this evening. And then we'll be back at 8 o'clock to talk to you further. So, Sam, this morning we were blessed by a digital concert, and then we had a sermon, three sermons by Barry Black and Dwight Nelson and Mark Finley. Can you imagine a better way to start a general conference session by having those three speak to us?
It was a very spiritual starting us off in a very spiritual note. In fact, the dedication prayer talked about this stadium being used for sports and concerts and other events. But this week, it's a church.
Right.
And God, we asked for God to give us an awareness of his presence in everything that happens this week. So it was a tremendous start on a spiritual note for all the business that will happen.
Right. And we kept that spiritual note going by having the president's report, the president of the Seventh-day Adventist World Church of the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists, Ted Wilson, gave his report. This is something that happens pretty much the first thing in every general conference session. And that is the president gives a report to the members, to the executive committee about what has happened in the past 5 years, but now 7 years, the past quinquennium. Did we find out what was 7 years?
No, I don't know. Nobody wrote it down.
So it's going to be 7 years.
Go ahead and tell us. What does 7 years look like? 5 years quinquennium, 7 years. I don't know. Just Google it. I forgot.
Yeah. So in the past 7 years, Sam, what happened? I mean, there were amazing story after amazing story about how the Adventist Church is working around the world. What are some of the things that you heard that stuck out to you?
Well, the report was very standard because you have to talk about all the departments. That's the whole point. So Elder Wilson talked about all the departments, their activities, what they were about, and what a highlight of what they achieved, etc. But the whole theme, especially toward the end, was forgiveness and reconciliation.
Yes.
Forgiveness and reconciliation. Here's a story about forgiveness and reconciliation from the DePaiva family, Melissa in particular. Here's a story from these group of rebels and the army. They've been killing each other for years and decades, and suddenly God takes over and they give their lives to God and they are reconciled. We even had a baptism at the end from one of the colonels in the army who watched what God was doing with the rebels and said, no, this is God.
Right.
And today was really special. He was baptized during session. We normally don't have baptism.
No, we don't.
Session. But this was a very special way of presenting this, the centrality of forgiveness and reconciliation to the business of the church, to the gospel. And I can't think of a better message in this fragmented world, polarized world, that you have your thing and the other person has their thing. In the last few years, we've seen family members who don't talk to each other because of their views. It could be political views, religious views. There are so many other views that people have. Is like, no, I don't want to talk to you because you don't belong to my group. And there's no groups. We are here under the cross, and we can all be forgiven in the same way. So that, to me, that's what stood out.
Right. And what was really awesome, I mean, if you guys don't know Melissa's story, they can go to Return to Palau. There's a website, there's a documentary coming out. That is such a powerful story as well, about a young girl whose family was murdered, and she went back and reconciled with the murderer. So, I mean, what an amazing story. He also highlighted prayer initiatives and books and literature items, and the Ukraine crisis, an example as world events, and what ADRA is doing in the Ukraine. And also, Sam, and you work closely with this, what Hope Channel in Ukraine is doing through the Ukrainian crisis. Hope Channel Ukraine, Elder Wilson highlighted, is actually still running in the midst of this conflict.
Yeah, they had 160 employees, and as soon as the first conflict really began, they kicked into gear and they started helping people and helping everybody, and they were tremendous in providing reports and helping the operation of saving people from the bombs and the military attacks.
And we wanted to say right now, you can go to the Adventist Church's GC Session website and the GC Session app. It's and you can watch the program live. But then later, after the program, each session is done, if you find something that we're talking about interesting, or you want to go back and see it, and I would encourage all of everyone who's watching this to go back and watch the worship service and watch Elder Wilson's report, because I think you'll be inspired. And you're right, Sam, in this age of division, reconciliation is important. And so you can go back and watch that on our YouTube channel. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So I think the majority, we want to talk about some of the things, what is happening right now. So right now they're kind of running through business, right? So this is the start of session. What are some of the things they do? They vote the mission statement. They vote the nominating. What are some of the things that they're doing right now?
Yeah, the beginning of a business session,
yeah,
everybody agrees on the big picture first. So let's agree on the mission of the Adventist Church. Let's agree on the rules that we're going to follow throughout these meetings. And we had even down to how many minutes a delegate can speak for, because there are thousands of delegates.
Right.
If they can just take the mic and talk as much as they like, I think that Jesus will come back and we're still talking.
And we can do that. We have 30 minutes. They have 2.
That's right. So 2 minutes for the delegates to have their voices heard by all the other delegates. And we voted that this morning.
Right.
There were 2 things this morning that could be contentious. And let's talk about those. The first one is the votes.
Right.
The voting system is working beautifully.
Right.
If you can get access to the internet.
Correct.
Our problem is access to the internet.
Right.
And because of this, delegates are using their
Election
own
Buddy
4G connection to get there. Election Buddy is working very well. I used it this morning because I have access through not the Wi-Fi, but 5G. But 5G or 4G or LTE or whatever name you want to call it. Now, we are hoping to get that sorted. And as we were going through this morning, it reminded me of an Apple event many years ago, this legendary Apple event. Steve Jobs was still alive and presenting. As you know, I love Apple. And he's about to present this feature. And it included, he needed the Wi-Fi for their own computers.
Yeah.
It turns out there were so many people connected in the stadium where they're in the theater where they were, that and creating Wi-Fi hotspots, that his system did not work. It's a little bit of what we're experiencing today, which is this: if you can get access to the internet, you'll be able to vote.
Right.
So the IT people are providing more bandwidth or doing the magic that only IT people know how to do.
Right. And they're making suggestions.
And they're making suggestions on how to bring that back. The other thing that happened this morning is somebody wanted to change the agenda.
Right.
So I think the name of the brother is Jonathan, if I'm not mistaken. He wanted to add the discussion on vaccinations to the agenda.
Right.
And there was a call for a second. There was no second. And so we voted the agenda and we moved forward.
But I think they were still talking about it when we went live. So we'll wait to see if that's been decided officially.
Yeah. So by the time we walked over here, that's what happened. Yeah.
So, I think that this is all something that sort of happens is we vote the agenda because we only have four days. And we are hopefully ready to go, but we are a world church. We are a global church, and everybody should have their opinions. So it's important for us that, like we talked about last night, Sam, the struggle. So we're struggling through things, and then we're going to move forward. We also, I know, are voting the nominating committee today.
Yes.
And this is a big part of session because we know everybody who's watching is thinking, when is that nominating report coming back? Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And we're waiting for it, just like every member. So they're voting the nominating committee this morning or last night. They put together a group of names, and they're coming together, right?
But that depends on the caucuses.
Yeah,
some caucuses met this morning.
Right.
Some caucuses have been meeting last week. So let's talk about what a caucus is. We have 13 divisions plus the attached fields. Each of them have a number of delegates that have been selected by the church in that region to represent them during these meetings. So altogether, we have 2,713 delegates. I think 1,900 are here or set to be here, and the rest are online watching on Zoom in their respective languages. Okay, so those are the delegates.
Right.
Each of the divisions have their delegates form a caucus.
Right.
So, and the GC is also an entity. So there's the GC caucus. They met at 4 p.m. yesterday. You have the Trans-European Division,
Right.
caucus, the South American division, all the divisions, they have their own. And they select the names that they would like to recommend, to suggest,
Mm-hmm.
to be part of the nominating committee, to represent them.
And it's 8% of the GC caucus
Yes.
and 10% of the division caucus.
Correct. And so by the time you get to what they're voting now as we speak, that they may have done it already, is they take the names from everyone, they bring it to all the delegates, and they ask, what do you think of this? Do they represent us well to struggle together and decide the leadership for the next, in this case, 3 years? So that's what we will see. This afternoon, the delegates, the nominating committee, once voted, they become the nominating committee, and then they get to work.
And they're going to be working hard.
Hard, because they only have a few days, and they have over 100 positions, 120, 30 positions to go through. So the first position that they choose is the president.
Yep.
So they will be discussing that, and we are waiting until they return with a report.
Yes.
Which is usually takes a few hours, sometimes longer. But we wait. It could be this afternoon, it could be this evening, it could be tomorrow. We don't know. When they come back with a report, whatever business is going on is interrupted. And usually you feel a buzz in the room. You know, they say there is a report from the nominating committee. You can just go, everybody goes and focuses and pays attention. Because it turns out when God leads the nominating committee and then the delegates to choose a group of people, there are a number of things that they are looking at.
Yeah.
Are they competent enough to do that role? And that's what the church does. Can we identify the giftedness that the Holy Spirit gave people? Have these people used their gifts appropriately in the past? That's the first question. Are they competent to do the job? The second question has to do with character, integrity, and also humility. And if there is, the Adventist church is very interesting. I was trying to explain to my neighbor this whole concept of nomination and service, etc. And I originally come from England. Well, I was born in Brazil, but
you're from everywhere.
I'm part of the Trans-European Division. So I'm a missionary here from there. And when I first came, I was trying recently to explain this to a neighbor, saying, no, the church can choose to send me anywhere in the world, depending on what needs there are. And we go. It's very exciting. You never quite know what's going to happen. And he's like, okay, but how do you put your name forward? And here is something about the Adventist church that I find fascinating. Just by really wanting a position, it guarantees you won't get it. So there's this idea of, if we notice that you are going to advance your own agenda or cause, or you are going to put yourself in a position of, you desire a position of power in order to exercise power, that's the fastest way to get your name off a nominating committee. Because we've learned that we really need the humility of people that will follow where the Holy Spirit is leading.
Right.
And we mention this again. The boss of the church is the Holy Spirit. He's in charge. So we gather and we wait as the nominating committee struggles and decides. And that's what we're waiting for today. When the president is suggested, it's brought to the floor, and then we vote on it.
Right.
Once voted, the president joins the nominating committee and continues their work of selecting.
He advises the nominating committee. Yeah. Right. And what's really interesting is these people who are chosen to the nominating committee, they're actually going to be having breakfast, lunch, and dinner with each other. It's a closed room, which means that people can't come in or out. It is a confidential room. They want to make sure that there's no influence from sort of this outside lobbyists or whatever, people with agenda. So it really is a group, and they're voting in that room together. They're watching the live feed and they're voting from that room as well. So we just, if you're watching this and you want to pray for someone, pray for the nominating committee.
Yes.
Because they're voting, or they're nominating people who are going to lead our church for the next at least 3 years.
That's right.
And they're going to be spending a lot of time with each other in the next 4 days. So
let me tell you my favorite part about the nominating committee that I've learned now.
Yeah.
Here's what I learned. You're going to like this. If you are in an electable position, you cannot serve in the nominating committee. This is fascinating. So if it's possible, if you're serving in a position that will that will be chosen, that will be looked at by the nominating committee, and someone will be chosen. You cannot be in the nominating committee.
Right.
It's not that you can't be in the room when they're discussing your name, possibly, because that happens in a local church. You know, in a local church, which I'm very familiar with as a local church pastor, when you mention, okay, let's have someone who would lead, who will be a deacon, for example. If the person is in the nominating committee and their name goes on the board, they leave the room so we can freely discuss. And any family member also leaves the room. It's the same in a conference and a union and so on. At the general conference, no, you cannot be voted in the nominating committee room, even if you are retiring, if your position at the moment is an electable position.
Yeah, they want to make sure.
So this leaves the opportunity for people to be more free in how they express their thoughts, and they choose the next set of leaders that will lead the world headquarters, both in the general conference and the officers
and
across
in the
divisions.
Yeah. So that is happening today. The nominating committee is being, and we're going to start hearing reports probably today, early tomorrow, from them, and we will hear them throughout the next week. And that's very exciting. Right after lunch, though, I think we are going to have something called, we're going to welcome some new unions to the family of unions.
We voted that now.
Yeah.
They're about to vote it when I walked out.
Okay. So they're going to welcome, but they're going to give a report and talk about them in depth. And that's really exciting because, that means our church is growing. When we create new unions, when we make a mission, a union or a mission, a conference, that means our church is growing. And that's really exciting to all of us. And there are, I think, about 6 or 7 new unions that are coming. And then, Sam, we start the business of the church.
Then we start moving just as I was walking out to the studio, they asked the Chinese Union mission to stand. All the delegates are here, as well as the Ukraine delegates. They're all here. They got visas and they managed to get here. So all of those 2 groups, they were waving flags and so on as I was leaving.
That's great. And for those of you who maybe missed at spring meetings, one of the decisions that was made was that the Ukrainian Union was moved out of the Euro-Asia division and attached to the General Conference. Eventually, the Ukrainian Union will join another division.
That's right.
Eventually, that will happen. But for right now, it is an attached union, much like Men of the Middle East and North Africa Union or the Chinese Union Mission.
Yes.
So it is attached to the General Conference and not to a division. And that decision was just made a couple months ago.
Yeah.
But they are here with the Euro-Asia division and participating in events together.
Yes.
So that's a really nice story too. So now we're going to get to the church bylaws, the Constitution, and the manual. And we really don't know sort of what order this will go into. When we get the agenda for the day, it just says that general thing, and then we see how far we can get.
Yeah.
Right?
And sometimes the chair decides to jump and do, this down here and then go back to this one here. It's their prerogative to make those changes.
Right. Sam, what are you looking most forward to hearing about? What kind of discussion and what church manual, what are you looking forward to hearing about?
I very much like the conversation on discipleship. Because I learned something very interesting as a pastor. In my first district, I was really going for it. And many people were baptized that first year. And some of them did not come back the second year. And I realized it was my fault because I was the one discipling them. When I realized that the second year, I was now giving Bible studies and discipling another group of people, I could no longer go have lunch in their house, spend Sabbath with them. That wasn't the case anymore. And I learned that it's not shepherds don't make sheep, it's sheep who make sheep, which essentially means all my Bible studies thereafter involved other Seventh-day Adventists in the local church who would come to the Bible studies alongside those interested in learning about the Bible and becoming Seventh-day Adventists. And this transformed everything, because now you have someone in the church who is helping in your discipleship process. And that's what this part of the manual, one of the aspects of this part of the manual is about, is the point isn't just baptism, is what happens afterwards. You've heard the truth, you responded to Jesus, you gave your life to him, you now have the Holy Spirit. It's not the end, that's just the beginning. And that discipleship process is now part of the manual. And I'm looking forward to that conversation.
That's really exciting. I really am excited I love Possibility Ministries. I think it's such a great, the director of it, I guess a special assistant to the president, Larry Evans. He's so passionate about Possibility Ministries. If you ever hear him talk or you meet with him and he's talking to you about what he's seen and the stories he's heard, it's just so moving. And so Possibility Ministries is the ministry that helps with people who are hearing impaired or visually impaired, or I think there's other groups like widows and orphans in that group as well. And they're making an effort to make sure that our churches are more inclusive and more thoughtful when putting together programs for people who maybe have some of these different struggles, in a church program that you don't even think about. I remember I was at a conference and they said, in our programs, we say, please stand up and sit down. With just an asterisk instead of saying it out loud. But for people who can't see, they don't know what the church is doing. And so just little changes that we make in our church, if we have someone within our congregation who's specially there to like help with those things, we can make church such a better experience for people. And especially the people who are hearing impaired are some of the most unreached people, and we really miss out on talking to them about Jesus because we just don't know the best ways to do that. And so now the church is saying, look, we're going to make this a special effort, and we're going to be more inclusive in this way, and we're going to open our local churches to encourage them to have people there specifically to make sure we have resources.
And this has
available.
impact across the entirety of Adventism.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have people in the local churches who are focusing on this, entities are more likely to focus on doing the same.
Right.
Providing accessible websites, providing accessible apps, providing everything accessible.
Just closed captions. I mean, it's an extra step that you make when you make a video, but it's so beneficial to people. Closed captions, it's such an important thing. So I'm really excited to hear more from Possibility Ministries and sort of what they have at Session and the stories that they will tell. Sam, I think we're going to wrap up for today soon. Right. Is there anything else that inspired you about this morning or that you're looking forward to tonight? Because we're coming back at 8, and so we will have a more in-depth conversation about what the business meetings look like today. Is there anything else that inspired you or that you would like our members who are watching to know?
What I would like to ask is for prayer, because if you're at home watching this, I can probably, very few of you actually understand or have seen how much work goes into putting this together. There are hundreds of people in the background trying to communicate with you. You're just seeing 2 of us here.
Right.
Just in this very room, there are about, 8, 10 people. And overall, there are hundreds of people that are doing their best to communicate with you, to let you know what's happening, to bring you meaning of what the decisions are. Because this is our church,
right?
And we are part of it, and we care about it. We don't all agree, but we love this church, and we want to see it succeed.
Right. I actually want to pick up on that a little bit, and that is, I think sometimes when we disagree, it seems like we love our church more than the person we disagree with. And that's not the case most of the time, right? You and I disagree often about a lot of things. We do. We do.
Almost everything.
Everything.
But yes.
Yeah. But I think neither of us doubt the sincerity that we have and the love of the church and the love of Jesus that we have. So we just come to different conclusions. We look at the same thing, but when we do that, we talk to each other respectfully, and we communicate respectfully, and remember that we're both image bearers of Jesus and we reflect his character. And I really would ask that you pray for us, but that you also that people treat each other like that as we go through this session, and maybe we disagree with each other a little bit on things, especially as we're commenting online and social media, that we keep those things in mind.
We call it a church family.
Yeah.
My family, we have many things we disagree with. That's the point. Can you disagree with someone and love them? That's really the call that we have at the moment. And you're right, social media can be very vicious.
Right.
And you have this process of, support, and then it goes further. You have cynicism, then you have sarcasm, then you have hatred. And we have all of that on social media.
Right.
Which, it's a public forum. You say whatever you want to say.
Right.
But the people that are contributing the most are those that are doing it constructively.
Right.
Those that, happen to love others. So When you love the church structure more than you love people, you have a problem.
Right. And
Because you haven't understood anything about the gospel yet.
Exactly. So I just always encourage people to remember that the people that you disagree with, they probably love the church and they love Jesus and they love, you know, being a part of this family just as
Yeah.
much as you do. They just have a different opinion. And at the end of the day, Jesus died for each of us and we bear his image. So
That's right.
let's be nice to each other.
Jennifer, let's get some lunch. And
Yeah.
we'll see you guys later tonight after the ANN video report that is coming. So ANN video report 7:30. And then Jennifer and I will be back here now discussing what happened during the day up until then. And you can watch the whole thing live or follow our social media accounts and see exactly.
And late nightish tonight at 9:30.
I'm looking forward to seeing what the girls came up with.
I am too, because they've been running around today. It's going to be exciting.
All right, guys.
We'll see you at 8. Bye.